You can't see around corners. And I've been obsessed with this over and over over a long period of time. If. And I mean, it goes a long way back. Back in Burnie, in Tasmania, in Australia, in the late 70s, if my dad hadn't seen the writing on the wall, with his job at APPM at the pulp, eventually it was going to be eliminated. He spent a couple of years building a brand new house. I mean, the first time we'd ever had a new house. And we'd stayed at Grandma's for a while, and then we eventually moved in. And then suddenly, boom, I'm in the middle of high school in Burnie, and we're going to be moving to another place about 50 miles away. Ulverston, Turners Beach, Tasmania, still on the northwest coast. Another high school, right in the middle of high school. You can't see around corners. Could my dad have seen around corners at that level of disruption in the middle of my high school, been put in a totally new area? And then what would have happened? 2 or 3 years, us being there before he moved away again, and I was going to a community college in a different region on my own, and then eventually staying with some people that my dad had organised. And guess what? Being effectively at 17, almost 18, being abused by or molested by a much older woman, which would eventually dominate a large portion of my young life. You can't see around corners. Could my dad have foreseen the choices that he had made would have set off something in motion that would have deeply affected the beginning of my life and started a series of dominoes falling? Okay, eventually I moved and got a career in Melbourne on my own, but which is across like a 250 mile strait or sea. But the grappling hooks of that relationship with an older woman were sunk deep into me. So if I hadn't just been so trapped in it as a young man and not understanding what was going on, and if I'd have just, when I got there, just decided, just let it go. But being a young man, so in love with love, that was the hallmark of that time. I couldn't let it go. And I had periods where young women, like at one point, this older woman had come over to Melbourne and seen me 3 times, or the third time she stayed, but the other 2 times she left. And I was devastated each time. And the last time, I remember, like a young man of 23, people in my office at my job where I had started working, been working for a few short years, one young woman in the merchandising department of this company where I was a computer operator or cum programmer. I think I'd moved into programming. People knew about that, I'd been devastated by a relationship with an older woman leaving me. And this young lady, my age, had remarked to me, pretty young lady, had remarked to me, "Do you think you'll ever get over it?" And like a dummy, I go, "Oh, no, I'm never going to get over it." I mean, how naive a young man. I could have just said, yeah, one always, gets over things and prepared to move on. No, I didn't leave the opening open. All I needed to have at that point in my young life is an older man just say to me, "Look, you know. It's across the sea. Change your damn telephone number, you know. Change your address eventually. Don't take calls. Cut this off, you know. Leave openings for other young women to come into your life. Move forward. If. But I didn't do it. You know, like, so fast forward like a half a dozen years, and eventually I'm with this woman. The third time she finally comes back, and then I have a kid with her, and now I'm totally dominated as a young man, as a family man, having the responsibilities, and bam, late 80s, the really tough Australian recession hits. You can't see round corners. I didn't know what was going to go on. I mean, my dad's like, can't you go bankrupt? I had a little baby that was 6 months old and a new job that was only double that length of time old, and a freaking car I'd got from that job, which was a financial millstone around my neck. Young family to support. I mean, no, I can't do that, Dad. So we survived, but it was a very large cost. It was a cost of the relationship eventually in the late 90s. 10 years it took me to dig out of that. And I worked 3 service jobs. Within 6 months, I got another computer programming job back, but it wasn't the same amount of money. So it took me and I had a lot of credit card debt just to keep this stuff going, and debts from reborrowing through a third party to try to keep the car loan going so I could have a car so we could live. So it was a devastating thing, and it was a prolonged recovery, and it was just another domino that fell, you know, like if I'd have just cut that woman off in the first place and had relationships with other young women, then maybe as a young man on my own, I'd have survived better. Yeah, okay, I wouldn't have had my son, but maybe I'd have been set up to withstand the situation. And if I'd have just had some older man as a mentor in my life, maybe I wouldn't have fallen into that whole trap. So of course the next domino falls, and I'm frustrated with this long-term relationship with this older woman. And then I'm on the internet in 1999, having recovered and having moved forward and advanced in my career at a point where I'm starting to financially get somewhat stable, but I still don't basically own anything except for a 10-year-old car. And then boom, suddenly it's like you've got mail, but you know, an earlier version of that. I'm getting to a point where I'm beginning to have a relationship, virtual relationship with someone on the other side of the planet. I just want to escape from the situation. I want to have a woman my own age. This, you know, virtual connection on the internet seems to be working. But you can't see around corners. If, you know, I didn't know how tumultuous that was going to be. I didn't know how it was going to come down. I mean, I got to Reno the first time and I met this woman, and within a couple of days we were having some ding-dong kind of issue with a fight or something or other, and I was booking a flight back from there to Sacramento so I could take an international flight, and she's begging me, and I'm like, okay, I'll let the flight go, I'll waste the money and I'll stay. Should have seen the red flags. No, man, I'm doing this all this stuff on my own. So eventually I got with this woman, came back to America the second time. We got married, I got immigrated, everything else. And then the whole story I wrote in my first book about that 6 years, that encapsulates that. But the thing about it is, I couldn't see around corners. I didn't know what a nightmare the whole thing was going to be. Of course, there was absolute moments of bliss, but there are the absolute moments of just misery as well, and being pulled emotionally so many different ways. And I didn't know that was going to set me up for what was going to happen in 2006 with my job. I couldn't see around corners then. I didn't realise that, instead of being obsessed with dating services and going out to the bar and drinking because I was lonely, I should have been more focused on, just get your money in order, get your expenses in order, be ready for whatever happens. So I finally think, I'll get down to Rancho Cucamonga in Los Angeles, 2007. I'll work in Irvine. I'm a consultant. I've got a lot of debts, but I've cleared a bunch of stuff, but I've still got a lot of taxes coming up. I can't see around corners again. I don't know that 2007, 2008 is coming. I just think that my new life as a consultant, totally on my own, still drinking at bars occasionally, it's just going to go on, and I'm going to finally, all the 15-something years of working as in IT is going to come to fruition, and I'm going to be a private consultant. It'll go from 7 months job to the next job to the next job to the next job, and I've got to be able to move forward. But you can't see around corners. You can't see through time. If no one's there to tell you what's coming. So bam, July of 2008, I get let off that contract. In September, Lehman Brothers falls. Everything, the whole world financial system is on the brink of a depression. And by November, there's just nothing. I really needed to see round corners right then. I really needed someone to say to me, look, when you went down there in December of 2007, you had a $600 apartment in Lodi. Instead of closing that off, you should have kept that apartment. I know the costs were high. I know you're a bit broke, but you borrowed money to get down there. You should have used some of that money for that 7 months contract to keep that apartment going. So when you went down and you got another apartment for $1,100 for 6 or 7 months, run both of those apartments at once, at the same time, because you don't know what's going to happen with your first job. That's what I should have done. I shouldn't have done the full move down there. I should have kept things going, because by the time things went really belly up, a year later, and I'd been out of the contract for 4 or 5 months, late November, December 2008, I really needed to have that apartment back in Lodi. In actual fact, as soon as the job went, what I should have done was I should have canned the apartment in LA in Rancho Cucamonga, and I should have just run back to Lodi, and I could have lived in an apartment $600 a month. Again, you can't see around corners. No one's there to advise you. Nothing's there for you to tell you like what to do when. But instead of sitting there and paying on the credit cards and paying on the expensive $1,100 apartment in Rancho Cucamonga for 6 months and hoping a job was going to come up in LA, a second job as a consultant was going to come up in LA, I could have just decamped, come straight back to Lodi, cut all my expenses, let the credit cards go. And another thing I could have done back there in 2008 is I've had a friend since, a mentor since, a trucking mentor in from 2017 onwards. Why wasn't that person just presented to me by the divinity back in 2008? He was working down there then, and I didn't know that person. I didn't know about the trucking industry. But when I was desperately flailing around figuring out what I was going to do in 2008, and eventually by early 2009, I'd sold my damn beautiful car, which was $55,000 worth of car, and took off to Australia as a refuge from the financial crisis. But if I'd have been back in Lodi and let all my credit cards go, or if I'd have run across a trucker down there in 2008 instead of looking around for somewhere to store my car and found out, look, there's a trucking company down there. You can park your car in the terminal and you can get a trucking job for a while. But that was, guess what, 2008 versus 2017, that was 9 years too early. The information wasn't there. You can't see around corners, and the information is always given to you too late. Like 9 years later, I ran across this person. So this is a rambling kind of video, and there's probably a bunch of other you can't see around corners and ifs and when I need the mentor and all that kind of thing. But I want to get to the current state of where we are with a lot of people, and I want to talk specifically about my industry as it was. 2008, I was an IT developer, and I'd really come up to my own, but as I said, I was only just starting to begin to recover from the after effects of the divorce, so I wasn't really that financial. But at the peak of a 25-year career, being thrown out of the industry, this is what I learned a lot since in the unshelteredness of the ensuing years. There was a period from 2008 through 2011 where I flopped around relatives, and then there's a period from 2011 all the way through to 2017, unsheltered, and through college and quasi unsheltered before I went trucking. A lot of unsheltered time. I met a lot of people who were down, who were unsheltered myself. Met them in shelters, met them around, and they had certain advice. You can't see round corners. If I could have seen round corners in 2008, in the middle of in July, when the job finalized and I didn't have work, I'd have dropped all the damn credit cards. I'd have changed my phone number. I'd have spent about 6 to 12 months of expenses booking up. So the phone was fully paid for that period of time. Got myself another phone that was a different number. I'd ignored all the dunning letters, ignored all the credit card letters. I wouldn't have paid on the credit cards. I would have let everything go that was unnecessary. I'd have gone back to the having held that apartment in Lodo for $600 a month, which was a lot less than the $1,100 in the apartment in Rancho Cucamonga. I'd have decamped and come back to Lodi if I hadn't come across, like providentially, someone 9 years too early that knew about trucking in Los Angeles. I'd at least gone to the lowest mean determination, the most frugal, the most cut, the most survivable kind of mode, rather than just wishing and hoping, which is not a plan. Wishing and hoping and thinking things are suddenly going to turn is not a plan, okay? There hasn't been a garden variety recession of 6 months where you'd have 6 months worth of expenses ready and you could be able to survive that and move forward, and everything would just come back hunky-dory, exactly the same it was prior to the recession, and it all recovers and you just go back to where. There hasn't been one of those since the 80s in any Western country. All they are is prolonged, deep, dragged out, and then the recoveries are even worse. And these are years and years and years long experiences where you get disenfranchised in time and experience and the what it more so is, because a lot of the stuff is still in my head. It's still in my damn head. I could still go back to that right now. Within a couple of weeks, be rolling. 6 weeks max. Okay, a little rusty. After 13 years or 14 years of being out of it, I could go back to the same thing. But it's discrimination. The recruiters, they look at you, like, oh, you've been out of it so long and supposedly it's changed a lot. No, in this particular field, it hadn't changed. It still hasn't changed. They still have ads for these people, right? 15 years later. It's the same stuff. But they won't employ you, okay? That's a terrible, terrible truth. And this is the point of the video I'm trying to get to. I've been noticing on a number of videos, there's been a lot of posts. Last year, there was stuff going on with tech, the newer tech, okay? This year, it's really still been continuing, accelerating. So a lot of these people, I saw a post today. Some guy's like, I was put out of my tech job a year ago. Look, I'm here to tell you my personal experience of tech. Okay, it was an older legacy dinosaur tech, but my personal experience of tech is tech. Here's a quote. It's known as a cost center. So when times start to turn down, tech, being a cost center, is cut first. So all you white collar guys that went last year, and then your white collar guys, just as many or more that are going off, been pushed off this year, you're done. You're done. Because we're looking at something that's greater than 2008 because it's taken so long to evolve that it's going to be worse than 2008. You look at anecdotally everything you know about what's been going on with the economy. There's nothing that's come up that said everything's great. It's all like, oh, this is bad and that's bad and that's bad and that's bad and that's bad. You know, and I don't need to go into the details about delinquencies and credit and layoffs and closings. You know, despite all the numbers the government gives you, you know how bad it is. You're not going to make it trying to hold on. Holding on and hoping is not a plan. You're not going to make it trying to hold on to something that was. It's just not simply going to exist for you. So if any lesson could be taken out of this video, like what happened to me, I mean, I'm a truck driver now, a freaking hand-to-mouth truck driver when I had, at one stage, you know, I had a pretty well-to-do career, okay? Holding on and hoping is not a plan. This isn't a short-term thing that you can get over. The world around you is literally on fire and burning down. Those huge forces are such a tidal wave compared to a little fish like you. They're not just going to come and, it's not just going to come and rescue you and you'll be okay like in 6 months or 12 months. Everything has changed for you. And my advice would be, like, if you get put off right now and you got a $600,000 job and you got put off with, I don't know, maybe $200,000 in severance, good luck. I mean, I never made that kind of money. I never got that kind of severance. Go as frugal as you possibly can. Do it right now. Forget credit. Forget dunning letters. Forget creditors. Forget phone calls. Go as frugal as you can right now and go to the lowest common denominator, mean derivative way you can possibly live, because you need to understand that it's not going to come back what it was before. You need to be able to survive in a new mode. You can't see around corners. Well, guess what? I'm telling you, I see around the corners that you are going to be able to face because I can never see it for me. There you go. That's the best advice I can give anybody.